Welcome to Brian Lehrer Live. We're here live Wednesday nights at 7:30. Tonight, Swazi and Spitzer hit the airwaves with their first campaign commercials. We'll check them out and see what makes these two Democrats running for governor different. Also, what's hot on the web. Video from real Iraq war footage you won't see on the networks to a teenager at home mocking MySpace.com. We'll go surfing the web for more interesting and illuminating footage and the hidden life of garbage tonight. First, the Swaz and the Spits. With me for this, Errol Cockfield, Newsday's Albany bureau chief. Hi, Errol.
Man, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for coming in. And if you've never seen Tom Swazi before, and you don't even know he wants to be your governor, check this out.
I beat New York's most powerful Republican machine. In 4 years as Nassau County Executive, I've turned the worst-run county in the country into one of the best. I'm Tom Swazi. I've never been afraid to shake things up. New York could use some of that right now. Soaring property taxes, failing public schools, more upstate jobs lost every year. And Albany, forget about it. I'm running for governor to fix that, because government should work for us, not the other way around.
Tom Swazi, a different kind of Democrat for governor.
So Tom Swazi's first campaign commercial, which debuted on Monday. We'll see part of Eliot Spitzer's first ad in a couple of minutes. But Errol Cockfield, let's assume that our viewers know nothing about Tom Swazi. Who is he?
Well, at least this ad, helped viewers, with the pronunciation of his name, which I think is something that's been tough for. It's been Susie, Swazi, but now they know it's Tom Swazi. I think the fun has just started to begin here because Tom went live with his ad on Monday and Spitzer went live the same day, and I think there was a rush by the Spitzer campaign to match him. But I think what's important about this ad is that Tom is really introducing himself to the public at large and saying, this is who I am, and sort of plays up his there's a lot of face shots. It plays up his good looks. It's him in front of the Capitol, the big Capitol building behind him. So he's saying, this is who I am.
And he's the Nassau County executive. And
right.
Since this television station only reaches the 5 boroughs, Nassau County is a little outpost east of Queens. No, I'm kidding.
Just east of here, yeah.
So
by.
let's Truth Squad that ad a little
Right.
bit. He said he beat New York's most powerful Republican machine. True statement?
It's true. He actually won a Democratic primary. He beat Tom DiNapoli, who had just moved out of the Democratic county chairmanship in Nassau, and then took on a Republican and beat him 2-1. So that's true.
Now, he had some help from Nassau, trending Democrat anyway, like much of New York State, and also the fact that even though they had been in power for a long time in Nassau County, the Republican machine had literally bankrupted one of the most wealthy counties in America somehow. So the voters were probably ripe for change.
Yeah. They were on the brink of bankruptcy. The former county executive, Tom Galata, had borrowed and borrowed and borrowed to the point that the county couldn't pay its bills. And here comes Tom Swazi to save the day.
A good old borrow and spend Republican?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was sort of like the White Knight riding into the ruined Capitol, so he could take over things quite easily, I think.
Also, in that ad, he said he's running to fix Albany.
Right.
Now, before we talk about his background on the Fix Albany crusade, again, for our viewers who might not know, what is considered so wrong with Albany?
Well, if you haven't paid much attention to Albany, there hasn't been much in the way of consensus between the three sides, the governor, the state assembly, and the Senate. So in the last year and a half, I think you've seen a lot of activity because there's been this public movement to get Albany to do more, to reform things in Albany, and the legislature has been called the most dysfunctional in the country, so they've been trying to change that by actually doing things.
Right. It's not just that they don't agree, it's that we do have this reputation of having the most dysfunctional state government, and maybe the least democratic, small d, state government in the country, because you have this 3 men in a room phenomenon where the leader of the assembly, the leader of the Senate, and the governor seem to make all the decisions, and all these other elected assemblymen and senators from all over the state seem to have no power. Is that overstating overstating the case?
No, that's not overstating the case. Unlike many other legislatures in the country, Albany has statutes that give the leaders tremendous power above the members. In fact, if you're in a minority party in Albany, you can't even get a bill to the floor so that members can debate it and then vote on it. So if the leaders don't want something to get to the floor, you don't have any shot.
So Tom Suozzi, as Nassau County executive, already has this reputation of bucking his own party's leadership. That's Sheldon Silver, the Democratic head of the state assembly.
Suozzi is certainly not the establishment candidate. Spitzer is, and he's challenged Shelley Silver on this, and he's challenged the Democratic state chairman Denny Farrell.
Just by running against
just by running.
Spitzer. But before that, he ticked off Sheldon Silver so much about something that he got uninvited to the Democratic National Convention in 2004. How did that happen?
Well, essentially, I mean, because of Tom's long-standing interest in running for governor and the fact that he's been calling up Democrats across the state and trying to get their support, he has not been on good terms with Shelley Silver. As far as the Democratic convention goes, Tom had usually been invited to be a delegate, given his power as Nassau County executive. But because of this push to take on Spitzer, he was disinvited, essentially.
Now, he's not just taking on the Democratic Party machine. He's not just taking on the problems of dysfunctional Albany. He has decided, and, you know, I think people in the Democratic Party, except that he's bucking the power structure, consider him a smart, daring, attractive politician, pretty young, and yet he's going up by his own choice against Eliot Spitzer, who I don't think it's understating it or overstating it to say that he's a rock star now among New York Democrats. Why?
Well, I think Tom, because of his win in Nassau County, which was an upset win, he thinks that he can replicate the same formula on a statewide level, but, you know, I'm doubtful. You know, I've seen Tom do some really, really great things over the years. I've been covering him for 5 years now, but this is really an uphill battle.
Yeah, and that ad, straightforward, here's who I am, you get a good look at him, but it's not a grab you by the shirt collar and, you know, make you pay attention.
One of the problems I had with this ad was Tom, in the ad, he says, Albany, forget about it. In a way, he's trying to separate himself from Albany and say, I'm the outsider, but yet the shot is in front of the state capitol itself. It's not on Main Street, you know, New York State somewhere, you know.
Right. So, not to be outdone, Mr. Spitzer hit the airwaves with his first commercial on the same day. Let's take a look at a little bit of that.
For every New Yorker whose husband or child has to go somewhere else just to get a job. For every New Yorker drowning in property taxes. For every New Yorker who's been ignored, left out, who's been told you can't fight City Hall so many times, they've come to believe it.
All right. Who did we not see in that ad?
We did not see Eliot Spitzer. And in fact, in his second ad, which is going to debut tomorrow, it's the same approach, but at the end of that ad, you're going to actually see a shot of him. But in the ad that's going to air tomorrow, it's headline after headline from newspapers, shot one after, coming fast at you. And then, you know, it says, well, if he's done this, all of this, meaning the ads, imagine what he can do as governor.
What we saw in that ad, or maybe I should say who we saw in that ad, was a lot of regular and powerless New Yorkers.
What Eliot is doing is playing to his strength. I mean, his reputation is that he is a powerful attorney general, perhaps the most well-known attorney general in the country, someone who stood up for the common man, from, you know, investors on Wall Street to folks at Macy's who've been racially profiled. So he's playing to that.
You have a Newsday, New York One poll recently on this race. How are they doing?
Well, Eliot Spitzer is by far the six to one, you know, favorite in this race, according to our poll.
1?
Yeah.
6 to 1. I think. Do I remember the number? It's 60% to 9%.
Yeah.
Now that's just starting out of the gate. To be fair to Suozzi.
Yeah, I think. Well, you know, this is early. We're still early in the season here. Swazi's not to be underestimated. He has the ability to raise a lot of money. Elliott is far ahead of him, but I'm hearing from people within Swazi's camp that he's already, I think Elliott's at 20 million, Swazi's getting close to 10 million already. Really? This is what I'm hearing. So I think Swazi, I don't know that he will catch up to Elliott, but he's going to be a formidable adversary fundraising-wise.
You know what I'm curious about regarding Spitzer and money? He's taken on Wall Street. That's probably his biggest claim to fame. Then he took on the insurance company.
Right.
Who is going to bankroll this campaign if he's blown off the biggest usual campaign funders in New York State?
Well, there are a lot of wealthy people in New York State and across the country who are not just in the investment sectors. A lot of his money comes from, some people you might not, movie stars. He moves in some very wealthy circles, so it's not just Wall Street. Tom Swazi's going to get a lot of Wall Street money from the people who have been targets of Elliott Spitzer, so he might get more Wall Street money than Elliott Spitzer does. Right,
which could put him in a difficult situation with Democratic primary voters. I mean, will he want to be the candidate who's carrying the vendetta money, the revenge money, for the Wall Street firms who Spitzer busted for, illegal dealings against their investors and things like that?
Well, I think that's going to depend on the Spitzer style as it relates to this campaign. So far, Spitzer has played Swazi with very much kid gloves, but Swazi has come out swinging. At some point, this campaign may turn to a point where Spitzer is going to have to be more combative with Swazi. But I don't know. Right now, it's really, on Spitzer's side anyway, a gentleman's campaign.
By the way, whoever wins, who are they going to run against?
Well, the Republicans are having a bit of a tough time right now. There's a real split in the party about who they're going to back. The two main contenders are the former Massachusetts governor, William Weld, and John Faso, who's an upstate Republican who was an assembly minority leader. Folks might know Weld from his Massachusetts days, but they really don't know Faso. I think Weld's got the best shot. He's going to get the nomination. I bet on that.
While you're here, I'm going to take advantage of the fact that we have the Albany bureau chief for Newsday in the studio tonight. There's actually so much going on in the state.
Yeah.
So let's touch another couple of topics.
Busy year.
Yeah, and busy day. The talks on how to redevelop Ground Zero broke down last night.
Yeah.
These are talks between technically the Port Authority, which owns, of course, the Twin Towers site.
They're the landlord.
And the developer, Larry Silverstein, who's the leaseholder. Actually, his lease took effect only weeks before 9/11.
Right.
But they're in very delicate, very contentious negotiations over who's going to own what and what's going to go where and who's going to be in the Freedom Tower at Ground Zero.
Right.
What's this about?
Well, I think politicians are to be blamed here. In particular, Governor George Pataki and Mayor Michael Bloomberg, because what is it? It's March 2006, and we're, almost 5 years after 9/11. Why are these negotiations just fermenting now? And I think that's because of a lack of leadership from the governor, who took a really he gave Silverstein a lot of leeway to sort of run the day on this. Then Bloomberg wasn't really at the table. He was focused on the stadium fight on the west side and left it to Pataki, who wasn't really that engaged. So now 5 years later, everyone's sort of pointing the finger and saying, why don't we have consensus on this when there's never really been forceful negotiations by all the sides?
By the way, from your reporting,
yeah,
could you tell if that was ever an explicit deal? That was a lot of the finger pointing against Mayor Bloomberg during the campaign, was that he made a deal with Pataki where if Pataki left him alone on the West Side Stadium and supported the West Side Stadium but quietly and in the background, Bloomberg would leave Ground Zero to Pataki.
Right.
Was there ever a handshake or a toast of a beer
or something? It was as explicit as it gets in politics. I mean, and you judge that by tone. You read between the lines. Bloomberg was very silent on Ground Zero prior to his reelection. As soon as he was reelected, and in one of his first major speeches on the state of the city, he came out swinging. This is what we need to do at Ground Zero. We need to have more housing. We need to do this, that, and the other. So where was he before that? I mean, you have to really wonder. I think he yielded to the governor.
And in fact, that's one of the big disputes in this Ground Zero situation is between Mayor Bloomberg and Silverstein, right? The mayor wants this mixed-use, 24/7 kind of community down there with office space, with a hotel, with residential development, and Silverstein, certainly his interest, wants offices.
It's been an ongoing debate. Silverstein sees Ground Zero as an office complex purely, and you have sort of independent planning advocates, and you have the mayor saying, well, in order for us to make this place work, we're going to have to make it vibrant. It's going to have a commercial side. It's going to have a housing side. It's going to have a retail side, and be, you know, really alive and integrate with this memorial that's going to be a big tourist attraction.
All right. Well, you'll see more of this one in the headlines tomorrow if you follow the news.
Yeah.
They are going at each other, the governor, the Port Authority, the mayor, Silverstein. It's really
a
shameful
real mess.
Is what
it's
it
a
is.
real mess,
And it's shameful that it's happening at Ground Zero. Errol Cockfield, thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian.
Albany Bureau Chief for Newsday. Coming up next, The Hidden Life of Garbage. We'll see it on DVD. This is Brian Lehrer Live.
Some of New York's most admired figures don't sell out concerts. There'll never be a running back for the Giants. And they probably won't go platinum. But to millions of kids, their teachers are still the biggest heroes in the world. Join New York's brightest. Teach NYC.
Howdy, partners. Buckaroo Barry Mitchell inviting you to join us every Saturday morning at 9, beginning April 8th for Hopalong Cassidy Theater. Digitally remastered episodes of America's first TV superstar. A full hour of retro Western fun. Hopalong Cassidy Theater, Saturday mornings at 9, beginning April 8th on CUNY TV Channel 75. That is, if I can still get bulbs for this projector. Saturdays at 9, beginning April 8th on CUNY TV Channel 75.
This is Brian Lehrer Live. We're here live Wednesday nights at 7:30. The next big thing in garbage in America is e-trash. Dead computers, dead cell phones, dead iPods. Where do they go to die? What are the options? Well, e-waste is just one of many trashy revelations in a new book and documentary short called Gone Tomorrow, The Hidden Life of Garbage. And with me now to sample from the film and check out the book is the author and producer Heather Rogers. Here are some statements from the film that the producer disagrees with.
When I recycle, it makes me feel good because I feel like I'm helping the environment.
I think it's great for the environment. I think it's an important thing.
I feel like I'm actually doing something for the world.
You know, it's a hip thing. It's like having a higher consciousness.
Recycling makes me feel like
you've done something.
Yeah, I'm doing my part.
If you do it that day, you're like, yeah. When you recycle, you don't have to use this, more materials.
Recycling is good for the earth and stuff. I think recycling works.
Hi, Heather.
Hi, Brian.
You disagree with those statements?
Well, I think it's really important for us to question the realistic long-term viability of recycling as a solution to our garbage woes. I'm not sure that it's enough.
You're not sure that it's enough, but is it a bad thing to do? Let me ask you it this way. Is it fool's gold? Are we deceiving ourselves by recycling into thinking we're doing something meaningful when we're not?
To some degree, that's true. I think that it's important to say that recycling is better than sending our waste to the landfill or to the incinerator. That's without a doubt. But it's also important for us to interrogate the value of recycling, and also to think about how it functions on a cultural level, because it does convince people that ongoing and intensifying levels of consumption are fine, and actually they're not. They're very problematic.
So is your point that when I wrap my plastic and aluminum foil and stuff in these clear plastic bags and put them out on the curb, I'm actually deceiving myself into letting industry off the hook?
Yeah, exactly. Because, every day each American produces 4.5 pounds of garbage. A large percentage of that is actually, that's the average. A large percentage of that, the bulk of that, is produced by industries like manufacturing, mining, agriculture, and petrochemicals. And so what we need to think about is what we actually discard, whether it's in the recycling bin or the garbage can. But we also need to think about all the resources and waste that are produced by the manufacturing of products that we then buy to replace what we threw away. So it's a larger question.
And where did we come from on this? Well, here's another clip from the film that shows how much we've changed since before World War II.
In those days, a single thick glass bottle could be reused up to 40 times. But after the war, everything changed. Mass prosperity brought an explosion of a modern consumer culture based on advertising, image, and the persuasive power of brands and packaging. A new breed of garbage was born.
New. Gleam and only Gleam has the patented GL70 formula to destroy decay bacteria with just one brushing.
Well, what's the difference as long as you've got Tide?
I want this new Philco because it has adjustable shelves, and my husband likes the price tag.
By the late 50s, producers were spending as much on packaging and advertising as they spent on manufacturing. And, as the boom times wore on, markets became saturated. There was just too much stuff and not enough consumption. The trick was to keep people buying, to get the economy to metabolize more products. The strategy, built-in obsolescence.
Make your trips with baby more fun. Wherever you go, go with Playtex Diaper Disposable Diapers.
And how do you know they're ready to be disposed, these diapers? They're wet. Ronald Reagan did that?
Ronald Reagan did that. Ronald Reagan did a lot of things. He was part of a group called Keep America Beautiful, which was key in kind of managing again on the cultural level this moment when built-in obsolescence came to the fore as a strategy for manufacturers to remedy this threat of underconsumption. And the way that they talked about it in the late 1950s, I mean, what was happening at that moment in time was that Japan and Germany were recovering from the war. Most Americans had already bought a house, a car, all the appliances they needed, so markets were saturated. And built-in obsolescence created this opportunity for more consumption.
How hard was it, by the way, to collect all that historical footage?
I actually used, it was fascinating. It was an excellent process, but I used a lot of footage from the Prelinger Archive, which is a free online archive that everyone should know about, put together by Rick Prelinger.
Want to give the web address? Do you know it?
I don't know it.
Okay. The
but
Prelinger
if you Google
Archive.
that, you'll find him.
So I get the sense you're really after something larger here. I mean, yes, you're concerned about the actual effects of the garbage in the waste stream, but you're using it to say something bigger about the political economy of the United States.
Yeah, exactly. Which is one that at its heart has put its energy behind growth, and the way that growth is measured in this free market economic system that we live in is based on gross domestic product and profits, and it's not based on human and environmental health. And unfortunately, it's also not based on a democratic and fair use of our natural resources.
But a lot of our viewers are going to think, wait a minute, I'm for growth. Who gets hurt by growth? It hurts me if the economy doesn't grow, because then I'm not going to have a job, or I'm not going to have as good a job. Do you want me to root against economic growth?
Well, what's interesting is that that's the argument that's been presented to us for several generations. And again, when you look at the reality of the situation over the last 30 years, income inequality has grown. It's greater than it's been any time since World War II. Layoff rates are higher than they've been since the deep recession of the early 1980s. And so what we see in reality today is that, you know, what we're supposed to get is, you know, a high-waste economy delivers growth, which delivers a high standard of living for the average person. But actually what we're seeing is that isn't bearing out. You know, there are over 2 million jobs that have left the U.S. since the year 2000, and they've been replaced by half as many service sector jobs, which are not secure. They're low paying, and they don't have any of the benefits.
So in order to live without growth, you'd also have to close off the borders, basically. No?
Well, the real question is who's getting the benefits of this high-waste system, and the benefits of it aren't being spread out evenly across American society. They're being concentrated at the top, and so that's what needs to be interrogated.
Except even low-income New Yorkers have Tide and have you know, disposable diapers and have most of the consumer products that might have been for a certain more elite middle class back when those commercials debuted, most of them in the 50s. But they're for almost everybody now.
But they're for everybody, except that the costs of creating those goods, you know, and making them affordable to everybody involves this externalization onto the environment, what's called externalization of costs onto the environment, which is a bill that will come due. And it is coming due. I mean, we see it now with this last hurricane season and the destruction of, you know, one of the largest cities in the United States. And, you know, people will dispute that extreme weather is not the product of, you know, global warming. I disagree with that. I think it is. But also the way that income is you know, so unevenly distributed is something that creates the credit system that we've got now, where, you know, there are people consuming so much and using credit and using, you know, their mortgages to buy more stuff. And so it's not, I mean, it's not a sustainable system in that, you know, they're earning enough to actually buy these things. We've got negative savings rates now.
Here is one more clip from the film. Do you remember seeing this on TV?
Some people have a deep, abiding respect for the natural beauty that was once this country. And some people don't. People start pollution. People can stop it.
Talk about a positive stereotype, a model minority. When was that from?
That was from 1971, and it was produced by this group, Keep America Beautiful, which I mentioned a few minutes ago. And Keep America Beautiful is really important when we start looking at the issue of garbage in the U.S., because they've played a central role in shaping our conception of what garbage is. They started in 1953 in response to a law that the state of Vermont passed, which banned the sale of disposable bottles. And they passed it not because they were environmentalists, but instead because dairy farmers were finding that their cows were accidentally eating glass bottles and dying, and they just wanted to protect their incomes, and so they banned disposable bottles. And the beverage industry and the packaging industry joined forces and created Keep America Beautiful. And you're talking about Owens Illinois Glass Company, which is still alive and well, and the American Can Company, the makers of the first disposable can and bottle, and other companies like Coca-Cola and Dixie Cup came together and started Keep America Beautiful with a very conscious idea that they needed to shape public perceptions of what garbage was, because they would be faced with a public increasingly dismayed and disturbed at how much waste was the product of greater disposability.
By the way, we mentioned the book, and we've been looking at clips from your documentary. Is the documentary available to the general public?
Yeah, the documentary can be purchased from AK Press, and they're in Oakland, California, and they're on the web at akpress.org.
By the way, at the top of the show, I mentioned that one of the topics in your book is e-waste. Cell phones, computers, BlackBerries, obviously a new thing now with people going through them so quickly. Where do those things go to die?
A lot of them go, I mean, they go to landfills. And,
like anything else.
Yeah, and they're very toxic. They've got a lot of chemicals in them. Every monitor and television contains anywhere between 4 and 8 pounds of lead. They've got cadmium, and they've got brominated flame retardants in the plastics. And so these are very toxic substances that pollute groundwater and soil, and also bind with other chemicals in landfills and are released into the air. They also get sent for recycling, and a lot of good citizens pay extra to have their computers recycled when they get a new one. And the average lifespan for a computer is about 2 years now, so this is a frequent activity. So a lot of people are paying extra to have their computers recycled, and according to a study that was done a couple of years ago by the Basel Action Network, somewhere between 50 and 80% of the computers that are supposed to be recycled in the U.S. are actually sent to China for recycling, and there's no monitoring of what is called recycling over there. So they might just be disposed of, or they might be, what often happens is that they do get pulled apart, but there are no, the workers that do this maybe wear latex gloves if they're lucky, and so these are very toxic conditions and damaging to human health, and also, the chemicals that are used to strip the metals from the circuit boards are just dumped into the water system, and it's an environmental disaster.
Does it matter that landfills have gotten better? We have these lined landfills now where there isn't as much leaching to the groundwater. Incineration has even gotten better. We do recycle a lot of the waste stream around America now. Do we need to be concerned with waste as we were 20 or 30 years ago?
We need to be even more concerned with it than we were 20 or 30 years ago, because there's so much more of it. Over the last 30 years, the amount of garbage the U.S. produces has doubled. So we're looking at a massive increase of wasting. And not only is the quantity important, the quality of the garbage is important, like what you just brought up, e-waste, electronic waste. We have much, that's the fastest growing category of waste in the U.S. today, and it's incredibly toxic. We have more plastics, and so what we need to think about, as landfill technologies and incineration technologies appear to be improving, these are technologies that are designed, to the best of engineers' abilities. But in the end, even the Environmental Protection Agency today says that the most high-tech landfills will leak.
So what's the most important policies that the government should adopt, in your opinion, to do something about all this?
Well, what needs to happen is that we need to have greater product durability, greater serviceability. If your cell phone malfunctions, you can get it repaired instead of having to buy a new one. And DVD players and iPods will last longer. They'll last, 3 years maybe instead of 1. And
you mean buy the service plan? Everybody else says it's a ripoff.
No, I mean, I'm telling the manufacturer, the government needs to tell manufacturers, they need to require manufacturers to make their products last longer. And what happens so often is that government acts as the handmaiden of business. They don't act on behalf of human and environmental health, and that needs to change. We need a democratization of the use of our natural resources, and the state needs to act on behalf of the environment.
Heather Rogers' book and DVD called Gone Tomorrow, The Hidden Life of Garbage. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up next, what's hot on the web? Video from real Iraq war footage you won't see on the networks to a teenager at home mocking MySpace.com. We'll go surfing for the interesting and illuminating. This is Brian Lehrer Live.
I'm Harry Connick Jr.
And I'm Branford Marcellus.
Hurricane Katrina devastated our hometown of New Orleans and destroyed communities all across Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama.
But plans to rebuild have already begun. Join us with Habitat for Humanity in Operation Home Delivery as we rebuild homes and lives.
New Orleans and the Gulf Coast can recover, but only with your help.
Please, donate, volunteer.
Get involved. Visit Habitat.org.
The right to know what our government is doing is one of our greatest freedoms and protections.
It's a closed meeting.
Lately, government officials are trying to keep us in the dark.
Not for release.
It's time to let the sunshine in. Information is the oxygen of democracy. It's your right to know.
Prominent professors, outstanding students, illustrious alumni, all on the Emmy-nominated magazine show about CUNY. Hi, I'm Vianora Vinca. Join us this Sunday when we'll bring you the stories about people and programs that make CUNY a place where you study with the best.
This is Brian Lehrer Live. We're here live Wednesday nights at 7:30. Nowadays, when there's a major news event, people will often turn to a source other than their TV set to see the visuals. The web is fast becoming the main place for a generation unhappy with the fare on the mainstream networks. And since almost anyone can upload video now, most of that footage is driven or created by the people watching. So what does this democratization of television mean? Well, to find out, we decided to start a series featuring the best and some of the most popular of online video. With us this week is the creator of one of the most popular web video sites, Rocket Boom. He is Andrew Barron. Welcome back.
Thank you.
To Brian Lehrer
Thank
Live. You. And let's get straight into our first look at the online video zeitgeist. This clip has been one of the most downloaded on the major video sites this week. Let's watch.
When you're hot, you're hot. And high school senior Jason McElwain was in the zone. In the last 4 minutes of the final home game at Greece Athena High School in Rochester, New York, Jason hit 6 out of 7 three-pointers. Not bad, considering it was the first time he got to play in a game all season.
As soon as the first shot went in, and then the second shot, as soon as that went in, I started to catch fire.
McElwain, who's autistic, is the manager of the school's varsity basketball team. When his team was up double digits with just a few minutes left, Coach Jim Johnson thought it was time for McElwain to get a shot. He just didn't expect so many.
You know, I've had a lot of thrills in coaching and, you know, coached a lot of wonderful kids, but I've never experienced something like this.
The crowd carried the excited teenager off the court.
Feels like a celebrity.
For Jason's mom, it was a milestone moment.
This is the first moment that Jason has ever succeeded and been proud of himself. I looked at autism as a Berlin Wall. He cracked it.
It's a beautiful story. The kid, you know, it's so heartwarming. The kid even got to meet President Bush yesterday.
Oh, really?
The president was crying. But why do you think that, of all the human interest stories out there, became so viral on the web?
Why that one?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I actually wondered that myself, and I kind of attribute a lot of it to the way that, not just the story itself, but the way that the story was put together, actually, that the combination of those two events created this sort of mimetic scenario that it was bound to touch people just regardless.
And it started, as that clip indicated, as a CBS story. It was a feature story on CBS. But then the web really sent it out all over the country, all over the culture, so much so that the other networks picked it up and had to credit CBS for the video.
Yeah.
But it really seemed to be the web that was driving this past its original CBS audience.
Yeah. Well, the web has the ability to take, you know, some kind of timed and over-with show that's never accessible again and take it out of the national audience and make it into an entire global scenario overnight for free.
There's also an issue that's raised by the way this happens because, well, we got that from a site called YouTube,
right.
Y-O-U-T-U-B-E. It was an original CBS production, as I said, but then it started being used so widely on the web and downloaded so many times from these other sites like YouTube that CBS actually demanded that they take it down, which they did for a while. Then somebody else put it up on another site. The networks are losing control of their own stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in a way, we say losing control, but in a way, there's a demand for the content that they've created, but they have not been able to keep up with the demand.
Yeah, but CBS, I mean, let's face it, what they wanted was for people to have to go to their website in order to get this thing so they could get the ultimate revenue from having so much traffic on their website.
But did they have it available there?
I presume they had it available there.
I think initially it wasn't so available there.
Uh-huh. But then they put it up, I think, after
later.
they realized this became a popular thing. But do they have a point? Do they have a certain intellectual property right to get the benefit of something that they produced?
Well, I personally, it's a debatable issue, I suppose, in this new era, in this undetermined environment where there's no real precedence. But I certainly do believe that it is legally, it's their right to, send the cease and desist and make sure that other people don't put that video up.
Right.
And that people come to their side if they want to watch it.
But I think we'll be seeing more of these kinds of tugs of war. Now, that doesn't seem so substantive at face value, that clip, though it certainly shows the power of anyone with a video card and a high-speed net connection. But there was video more serious in nature doing the rounds in the past week as well. Here's a clip that was produced by the Christian Science Monitor in an effort to free their reporter, Jill Carroll, who, as you may know, was captured in Iraq last year. Let's look.
الصحفية المختطفة جيل كارول تحب العراق وهي الآن بحاجة إلى مساعدتكم. آن الأوان لجيل كارول أن تعود إلى بيتها سالمة. لنستمع إلى ما يقوله العراقيون عن جيل كارول.
يطلق صراحة لأن هي تملك عائلة وهي تعمل في خدمة البشرية، فلا نحرم البشرية من هذه الخدمة الإنسانية.
فهذه ممكن تكون أخته، ممكن تكون زوجته، ممكن تكون أمه، ممكن تكون بنته. خلي كل واحد منهم بس أريده يغمض عيونه ويتخيل أنه لو كانت هاي بنته أو أخته شنو شعوره.
أنا ووالدها وشقيقتها نناشد خاطفي جيل مباشرة لإطلاق سراح هذه الشابة التي عملت بجد لإبراز معاناة العراقيين.
How's your Arabic?
Not so good.
Well, obviously that was in Arabic, but you barely need to speak the language to understand what was going on there. And my understanding is that they put this out, the Christian Science Monitor, in Arabic, hoping that bloggers who speak Arabic would start emailing it around or forwarding it around the Arab world.
Yeah. Well, this is exactly the perfect example of the true democratization of this medium. Previously, to be able to do something and to try to have this kind of an effect on the world, you probably would have had to send out a petition and get signatures, and it would have been letters and stuff like that. Not very powerful compared to the moving image. To be able to see this and feel this, kind of like we just did with the basketball clip, that sort of emotion that comes from actually seeing something is so powerful. And now that we're in this age where anybody can kind of grab those tools and utilize them and utilize the distribution and promotion routes that have been inaccessible before, means that it's a really world-shattering type of a transition, I think.
And if Jill Carroll is released someday, we may or may not ever know whether this video for bloggers had an effect, but maybe it will. Still on Iraq, this clip is from Reuters online video offerings. Here is some footage of the aftermath of one of those 6 car bombs that were exploded nearly simultaneously in Sadr City, Baghdad on Sunday. And we should warn you that some of these scenes are disturbing. Now that's not actually video verite. That is edited news footage by Reuters. When I worked in commercial television, we used to get things like that at a local television station that I worked for in Virginia, fed by NBC. We were an NBC affiliate. And the intent at that time was for us to take it and have our anchor talk over part of it and explain the news story, just read the news copy over what we call B-roll, which is usually silent video as it goes by. I don't know how this is going to be used now that AP and Reuters have started offering things like this on their website right to the general public. But I found it really interesting just to take this footage and not talk over it, not try to edit it into part of some bigger thing, but just play it as it was, and we never see anything that raw on the major networks.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, you know, again, it's probably because previously, up until now, the space in which you can utilize on the major networks is so expensive, and it's so elite, and it's so precious that, you know, everything's got to be completely calculated, and, you know, for the lowest common denominator and everything. With the internet and being able to put it up online, if only 10 people watch it, there's no loss. You know, but you could throw everything up there, and it's just, you know, the possibilities are endless, basically. So I'm looking most forward to having the news being delivered in terms of a synopsis, but then for those people that are interested, they can click around and get much more, like all the B-roll footage. Why not throw the whole tape up there sometimes? If somebody wants to sit there and watch it.
That's right. And talk about this phenomenon a little bit more, because it is just recently that Reuters and AP, the big news wires, but they also do have video services, have started offering clips like that direct to the general public. Remember, it was the AP that put out that tape of President Bush at the pre-Hurricane Katrina conference just a couple of weeks ago as part of one of these initial offerings, and that became so embarrassing to the White House, even though the text of that pre-Katrina conference, which said, don't worry, everything's going to be under control, got out.
Yeah. Yeah, and what's interesting, too, is, you know, there's really no control over any of this right now, and it spreads like wildfire. I mean, literally, it can spread around the whole entire world in a matter of a couple of hours.
Yeah. We downloaded much of the material that we're seeing tonight from websites like YouTube.com, which I mentioned before, and iFilm.com, and they're open to whatever users upload and use their material. It can be anything from home video to what somebody at the site recorded off TV and just thought was cool. How would you describe the kind of fare that's accessible online, the range?
A lot of people talk about it in terms of a long tail, where just as with anything, you have, you know, very popular elite shows or elite content that, you know, people like and they're familiar with, and then you have this really long tail of lesser and lesser and lesser seemingly important stuff, like somebody who just went out to and, you know, filmed their little dog. But to be able to sometimes, like, whoever put this video together of the basketball player, that was obviously a very big hit for that production crew. And so the reason why that became a hit was because it was allowed to be consumed freely, and then it rose up naturally, and instead of trying to contrive something.
And here is some more video that we got from YouTube. This one is poking fun at the online social networking site MySpace.com. Let's look. For people who have no idea what MySpace.com is, that's a hoot.
Yeah.
But what was that filmmaker after there?
Well, that filmmaker, you know, who lives in this online environment is just basically is doing a commentary on the kind of stereotypical culture, you know, involved in that space. And I mean, you could have previously just written something about it, but again, you know, talking in terms of the moving image and being able to have those things, the tools so accessible and cheap that, you know, people are going to start putting together all kinds of funny commentary on their lives, and it's, again, it's so much more powerful, and it can be so much more compelling when it's a visual moving image.
There were also some copycat versions of that. Mm-hmm. We don't have one to play, unfortunately, but copycat versions of that started making their ways around the web. What were people doing to spoof that, spoofing MySpace?
Yeah, I mean, that happens all the time where, you know, somebody related to that and they likely had their own take. It's sort of like a commenting on it, or it's like having a discussion in a way, but it's creating content in the midst of it.
Right, and I understand that MTV is hiring that filmmaker to do some stuff for them. So that's pretty interesting. Tell me a little bit about your site. I know it's very popular. You told me before we went on the air that you're getting something like 300,000 hits a day.
Yeah.
And what would our viewers find on Rocket Boom?
Well, Rocket Boom's a 3 to 4 minute daily show that's very much in the style of sort of like Saturday Night Live news or Daily Show, in terms of it being kind of a comedic look on the current events. However, the one thing that distinguishes Rocket Boom from those shows in terms of the format is that the stories are actually true. And so while it's really funny, you know, and really extreme sometimes and bizarre, we're not making anything up. You know, we're just curating news stories that are very unusual and, you know, very sometimes intense with those kinds of unusual qualities.
And at 300,000 a day, you're getting more viewers than a lot of cable shows.
Yeah.
All right, let's play our final clip. Something a little more local than what we've been talking about. This is a fake ad for Mayor Bloomberg, made for the annual Inner Circle dinner last week. This features spoofs by City Hall press corps and a special guest star.
My lord is very truthful.
The king knoweth his own mind.
He owes not a sixpence to any noble man or woman.
He don't flip nor flop. To run a kingdom, you have to listen to the peasants. Whether it's about building good schools, providing better health care, or getting rid of the ox and cow dung from the streets. As supreme monarch, I've had to make the tough decisions, but the right decisions to lead my subjects out of the Dark Ages and into the next century.
To me, it's all about jobs. If I could spell, I would spell it J-O-B-S. B-S.
He's not vindictive. He don't chop people's heads off for disagreeing with him. Just for other reasons.
I certainly feel more secure these days.
Crime is down. We have more jobs. We did good trusting him.
Let us face it. Our school system has been failing our children for centuries. Now the king wants to put standards back where they belong, in the classroom.
So instead of spam a lot, they call that spend a lot. And you got to say that King Mike is good sport.
Yeah, I mean that's the political landscape that I feel like a lot of this internet video stuff kind of came out of in the elections of the 2004. That's what really spurred on a lot of creativity, and when it really became recognizable that this kind of stuff was working, people were making things and putting it out there to make a point. You know, this is a political commentary.
Yeah, and that, of course, was actually produced by Mayor Bloomberg. The Inner Circle, for those of you who don't know, is a dinner. It's been going on for decades, where the mayor and the City Hall press corps get together every year. And first the press corps does like a 2-hour spoof of the mayor and his commissioners, sometimes national politics, and then the mayor gets to come out and respond and do something back. I was there this past Saturday night, and usually only the reporters and the politicians get to laugh at it. But now with this, again, it's out there.
Show everybody.
And that's, of course, as in the style of a Bloomberg commercial, so highly produced and really funny and fun that it can get out there and people can see it.
Yeah.
So what do you think we're going to be saying about video on the web a year from now?
Well, I think we're going to see a lot more of convergence. You know, it's really, there's a TV set, there's a computer screen, you got the iPod video, and really at some point it's more about, you know, just that the video can exist on all these different platforms and reach different people, you know, anywhere.
All right.
So it's just going to keep going more and more and more in that direction.
Andrew Barron from Rocket Boom. It's rocketboom.com.
That's it.
Thanks a lot.
All right, thank you.
And that's it for tonight's show. We're here live on Wednesday nights at 7:30. Next week, we'll keep surfing the web for more illuminating video. And join me for my daily radio show, weekday mornings at 10 on WNYC, New York Public Radio. Tomorrow morning, missteps in the Moussaoui trial with guest host Daljit Dhaliwal. Have a great night.